I'm going to show you a couple different techniques for basket weaving with this material that's in your kit, the reed. To start off, you want to have a bucket of water, so fill up the bucket you have with enough water for the reed to go into and cover all of the reed. So I'm going to have a long piece in the water soaking as I cut one of the other long pieces down. So I'm going to cut it into 12-inch pieces. I'm just using my ruler as a guide to get one piece cut. And now I can take one piece, and I'm taking both ends of a piece, and I'm using that first piece that I cut to measure. And I'm only cutting one end each time, so that way I can hold on to my reed as I'm doing this, and I don't have to pick it up off the ground. So you want to be real careful as you're cutting. It's a little bit tricky to cut, so keep your fingers out of the way. Make sure to give your fingers enough space as you're cutting. So I have 4 pieces cut right now. So see, each time I cut the end, there's a long string that I bring back to the front. And I want to have 7 pieces in total. So right now I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, but I'm going to go ahead and just cut everything down. So all of those go into the water, and I want them to soak for 5 to 10 minutes so that they can become pliable. When you're working with this material, the reed, it can easily break when you're bending it. So if you soak it in water for 5 to 10 minutes with the size that we have, it'll become more pliable and it's less likely to break. So you can see this has been soaking for a while and it bends easier. If you start seeing the edges of it where you curve it, if it starts breaking, you want to put it in water and let it sit for a while. So my reed's been soaking for about 5 to 10 minutes, and I'm going to show you a non-traditional technique for starting this form with the basketry material. First, I'm going to take one piece of the reed and I'm going to make a circle with it. And to make a circle, I want to make sure that I'm overlapping 2 ends of the reed about 2 to 3 inches. And then I'm going to take another piece of reed that's been soaking, and I'm going to use this reed to make a spoke that I'm going to twine around, but I also am going to use it to hold these 2 ends together. So I take the piece and I'm folding it in half, so I join up the ends of my reed. And then I'm going to put that loop through the inside of the circle just on the other side of those 2 overlapping areas. And I'm going to hold this together as I take these legs of the spoke and slide them through that loop that I've made. And I'm going to pull them through gently. If you're having a hard time doing this, you need to soak your reed more. So you can see here it's fairly loose and these legs are starting to cross over each other. I want them to go around and straight up, so I'm going to reposition them next to each other. And then to tighten this, I can push down as I pull. So I'm holding this area in place as I pull these 2 legs, and you can see it's getting tighter. Now I want to push in. So these 2 loops that are made, I'm going to push in towards each other to give myself some slack, and then pull the legs. And I'm going to pull one at a time as I'm holding that area there. So you can see it's getting tighter. It's not totally tight yet. So I just want to keep maneuvering it And you want to be firm but gentle. I'm using quite a bit of pressure to pull, but I'm also looking to see if anything is breaking as I'm doing this. So I'm almost have it as tight as I want it. And now I'm going to move on to the next one. So I'll just set this in the water for a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and fold this in half, and I hold those two legs together to make that loop at the top. Now the loop goes from the inside of the circle to the out, and I'm keeping these spokes or legs sticking on the outside. So it goes from the inside to the out, and I take both of the ends and put them through the loop. And I'm putting the second one on top of the two overlapping areas too. I want to have 3 of those on top of that to really hold it in place. And I just tighten my circle by pulling this end here. So you can see if you want a really large circle, you can make a larger circle by pushing these together. You could also use a larger piece of reed. It's really up to you. So I have both of these next to each other, and you can see this one needs to be tightened more. And I'm just pushing these loops together and pulling one of these strands at a time. And you can see I can really use it and pull with it, and I can bend it a little bit because it's wet and it's been soaking in the water. So I have 2 of these spokes now, and I'm going to add 7 all the way around. And I can use either an even or odd number because I'm going to be twining this. If I was basket weaving, I would want to have an odd number, but I don't have to worry about that with twining. So I'm going to just go ahead and keep adding them all the way around. I want to have at least 3 overlapping here, and then the 4th one will be underneath, so then I can adjust the circle how I want it when I'm finished. So I have all the spokes on my circle, and I'm going to just shift them around a little bit so they start going in one direction. I'm going to use this, these spokes in the circle to twine a form that starts curving around this way. So I'm going to start first. Everything's been soaking in water, and I'm going to get a long piece of reed, which I will call my weaver. Two stuck together. I'm just sorting that out, and I'm just leaving my extra ones in the water. You want to make sure when you leave reed in the water that you don't leave it too long, like overnight. You can leave it for a couple hours while you're working on it, but then take it out when you're not working on it. And I'm just tightening up all of my spokes to make sure everything's where it's supposed to be. So I'm going to take this weaver, and it's a longer piece of reed, and I want to get the ends together. And actually I'm going to separate the ends so one is about 3, maybe 5 inches longer than the other one, because if I run out of a weaver and I need to add another one on, I overlap it slightly for like 3 or 4 inches and weave with it together. If I do that at the same time with both of these, it won't be as secure. So I've overlapped, or have about one side of the reed is about 5 or 6 inches longer than the other one. And I'm just going to find the center. So I have the ends, and I'm just pulling the reed until I find the center of where it is with those ends, one longer than the other. So it's not quite the center, but you can see I have my ends, one is longer than the other, and then I have this loop. So I'm going to take the loop and slide it over one of my spokes. And I'm going to treat both of these these pieces of reed as one spoke. And now as I weave or twine, so I'm going to twine, I'm going to make sure to position the spokes in the direction that I want them to go. So I'm going to twist. Twining is just a series of twisting two different weavers together. So I have one folded in half, so I have 2 long strands of this reed material. So I pull this right close to the spoke, as close as I can, and I folded it down I pinched it down with my fingers to really get it nice and tight. Now I'm going to twist the reed, so one is going underneath the spokes and the other one's coming on top. And I'm going to twist it so the bottom comes to the top and the top goes down to the bottom. And now I'm going to move over to the next spoke, and that reed that was underneath the last one is now going on top of the next one to the right, and vice versa. The top goes to the bottom. And every time I twist these, I'm twisting them in the same direction, and I twist it towards myself. So I'm twisting it one time, or half a twist, so the bottom comes to the top, and then I open those up and slide it through the spoke. So again, I'm twisting towards myself, and I slide those through so the bottom goes to the top and the top goes to the bottom. And then I want to take my long strands and just straighten them out because they're going to get twisted at the end. So closer up detail, I twist these so the top goes to the bottom and the bottom goes to the top. And then as I do this, I also want to pull on them so I get rid of any tension around the other spokes, so it's holding it nice and secure. So I twist Top goes to the bottom. So I push it down then close to that beginning of the spoke, and I pull on both of them to tighten them. Now I'm doing the same thing again. I twist and I'm back to the beginning. So here I want to make sure to push that started area, the loop where I started. I'm pushing it down and pushing the other reed of the twining close to it. And I'm going to do this one more time and one more circle. And you can see every time I'm doing this, I'm getting really close to the past one. So the row before, it's really close to it. And I continue twisting towards myself all the way around. So I have 2 rows all the way around. Now instead of twisting half a twist, I'm going to twist a full twist. And that just changes the look of the twining. It also creates more space in between spokes. So if I want the spokes to start sticking out more and have it really nice and tight and secure, I can twist it 2 or even 3 times if I want to. I'm just doing one full twist right now. So this top reed here goes down and it twists around and comes back up. And you can see with my left hand I'm holding tension on the reed as I twist it. And so here it's a lot of space and I want it to be tighter, so I'm going to push that back, the twist, to allow more space. So you can see here there's not enough space. So I just have to maneuver everything in place. And I am back to the start. So here I've started. I'm back to where I started, so this is where it started here. So now I'm going to show you, this is fairly dense right now, the twining that I'm doing, but I'm going to build it up. So I'm going to show you how to create more space if you want less density. So to create less space between the rows, I just have to, I'm going to continue with one full twist. And instead of pulling that all the way down, I just stop where I am. And I want to start having this shape curve up more, so I'm just going to hold these in place. So I'm doing one full twist. It's half a twist. I'm just going around, and if it gets to be too much space, I can always do a twist and a half if I need to. So now you can see it's starting to curve more because I'm holding these in place. And if I want it to go in more, I just need to hold these in place. I can also get a string and tie them or wire them together as I'm working. It's a little bit harder there if my ends are not loose, but you can do that. You just have to sew that, slide that reed in. So instead I'm just going to really start shifting it as I go. So each time before it gets tightened, I'm holding these in. You can see how it's held in. See how I hold that reed in? So now I'm at a place where one of my weavers is getting too short. Actually, both of them are, but I'm only going to start one new one at a time. So to start a new one, I have the long end of the weaver going out, and I just hold the two together. So maybe it's easier to see here, but I have that end and I just hold them together, and I'm going to treat them as if they are one weaver. So you can see I have these two together and I'm just weaving them as if they're one. So now I'm going to add more to the other end, and I'm going to do the same thing where I just treat it as if it's one weaver. So I overlap them about 3 or 4 inches. They get twisted together, and so that just locks them in. So they're treated as one together. So now I'm at a point where I'm going to stop my weaving. I want to go ahead and finish it off, and I'll show you how to do that. So for finishing, there are a lot of different ways to finish. I'm just going to show you one way right now. So I have this area where I twisted, and now I'm going to take these 2 strands that I used as weavers, and I'm going to use them to finish this form. So I'm going to take those strands and go underneath the spokes. And I want to go around and figure out where I want that edge to be and fold the spokes. It's really important right now that your basket or your form is soaking in water so that these become more malleable. So you can see on the left side where it's starting to break, and then the right side it was soaking in water more before I bent it, so it wasn't breaking. So I'm just going around and folding them where I want them to go, and then I'm going to secure them with the artificial sinew that you have in your toolkit. And as I fold these, I'm not folding them super tight. I'm taking my time to fold them, going fairly slow so they don't break. And then when I get back to the area where I started, and actually I'm going to move this one down further. So you just want this to go around the inside, and because I have more space and it started spiraling, this finishing is starting to spiral, and I'm just going to have it go back down to where it started. So you can really play with that too. You could have part of it be way up here when you're finishing and the other part go down, so you can create a different shape. So you all, I believe, have some clips in your kit. I'm going to use a clothespin here, so I folded down the first one, and I'm just going to pin this into place before I start using the thread to secure it. So I'm going to pin the first one down, and then I skip a couple and fold this, and I really want to make sure these two strands of reed don't cross over each other, just for a cleaner finishing. And then I'm pinning that into place. And now here at where I have the end, I'm going to go ahead and take this end and I'm going to clip it so it's a couple inches longer than where I want to finish, and I'm just going to slide this into that start area. So once I secure this down with the thread, I'm going to trim this off. So I have my basket for this form, and you can see it's not a traditional basket. But I'm going to now take this, it's a waxed thread, and I want to have it about 4 times the length of one circle around the basket. So you can see here, I wrap it around. I'm going to double that. And now I'm going to double that long length. So that should be plenty. I always like to have a little extra just in case. And I'm going to clip it off. So you can see this starts separating a little bit. It doesn't totally separate. It gets stuck in areas, so just work with one big strand at a time. So now before I start working, I want to bundle this up just so I don't have a long string I'm working with. So I'm making a small butterfly, so I wrapped it around my fingers, and now I'm wrapping around the middle. And you can see this is a shorter string to work with, so I don't have to worry about it getting caught with on the basketry shape. So to lash this together, I'm going to start at the bottom left corner, and I have the end of the reed is coming over, and I actually want to go around and make sure none of that is twisted because I want it to be flat. So I'm just untwisting that all the way around to make sure those are in the correct order. So I'm going to start with this waxed thread, and you can see I have a couple inches on the end here that's sticking out. Now I'm going from the bottom left to the top right corner, and I'm going to go back to the bottom left corner. And as I do this, I need to be really careful not to catch those other spokes. So I've secured that there, and it goes all the way diagonal across the top and the back. I come back up to that top right corner, and now I'm going to go underneath, so straight down to the bottom right corner. And notice I'm holding my thumb with the start of the lashing. And this bundle that I wound, the butterfly now is coming undone because I need to use the string. So every now and then I'm just going to wrap it a little bit so it's nice and organized. So now I'm going to the top left and then to the bottom right corner. So I'm going the opposite diagonal. So I started in the bottom right corner, I go up to the top left and secure that. I go up to the top left and then down to the bottom left. And the thread starts getting caught on these spokes, but the further along we go, the more secure everything will be. So I want to make sure those pieces of string are on either side of the spokes at the top and it's secure. So now I'm going to go up to the right and I'm going to wrap it around 3 times, catching the ends right here of the spokes. And my bundle's starting to come undone, so I'll organize that again. So I've wrapped it twice. And I'm just wrapping that bundle again. So I've done 3 wraps around this top, and now I can take this clothespin off because that's secure. So I'm going to do the same thing on each one of these. But before I get started, I want to go first from the bottom left corner to the top right corner and then down to the bottom right corner, so I can tie off in the same pattern. So now I go up and over to the top left, and now when I go up and over, I'm going to go down and from the bottom left to the top right and back to the bottom left to make sure I have an X there. So now my reed is starting to dry out, and I'm going to put it in the water for a little bit to soften it so I can keep going. So I soaked my basket again, and I just put my, the thread was sticking out of the basket in the water as I was soaking it. So now the spokes are more malleable. I'm going to go up to the top right corner, down underneath, and I'm going to do the same pattern all the way around. And I'm actually going to take, where did my other clothespin go? I'm just going to take this clothespin and borrow it so I don't have to hold on to quite as much with my hands. I want to make sure to get all of that into the pin so it stays in place. And now I can just focus on really securing this top reed to the spokes. So every time I pull it, I wrap it, I pull it tight. And now I'm going to go back up and over. So I want to make sure at the base to wrap it to, this reed is thick enough that it really needs that extra support, and I forgot to do that on the last one. Top right to the bottom left. So I'm going to make sure to do a diagonal first. Top right, bottom right. each time I'm really pulling that. Top left, bottom right. Top left, bottom left. There we go, so we have an X. Now I'm going to wrap it around, bottom right, back to the bottom left, and pull it taut. And then again, now that I have it wrapped once, I'll take that off. Bottom right, bottom left, and pull it taut. So the beginning, I did not wrap the spoke. So I'm just going back over here. To wrap the spoke so it holds it in place. And I have this beginning thread that I started with. So now I've pulled this tight. Now I'm going to tie these two together. And I have another area where I didn't wrap that spoke, so I want to make sure when I'm going around, you can see the areas where the spoke is wrapped, it's much tighter. So I want to make sure as I go around that I wrap those spokes. Now I can go back in and trim those spokes down. So I just bring my scissors in. I want to leave about 1/4 inch out where the spoke is. And the areas where the spokes are loose because I wasn't quite tight enough when I first started. Be careful that this doesn't fly into your eyes. It's a good idea to wear safety glasses when you're cutting this. So a few things you can see right here, that these spokes are too loose. So what I'm going to do, instead of having to redo it, if you ever get to the place where something is too loose, you just need to go back in and fix it. So I'm just going to take some of this string